And let's talk about family. Glenn laid it all on the line tonight. And you know, all of these government programs and all these responses to look at needs and respond to needs actually is coming out of the depravity of our culture.
That's right.
And let me caution you a little bit. There are good, don't throw me out of this room, please. There are good liberals who have compassion for people. And because of their thought process and because of the way they think, the only thing they can think is to respond to the government. So you can't trample on all compassion. But they're wrong. They're absolutely wrong. They're wrong in their ideas. They're wrong in their approach. They're wrong in their outreach. They're wrong in the way they want to deal with these issues in our culture. And one of the things that's happened in our culture is we have sexualized everything. Absolutely everything. That's why our teenagers are getting pregnant. That's why our children are getting pregnant out of wedlock. This is why there's no conversation whatsoever about what it means to be a responsible parent and to enter into a union of one man and one union, and to bring those children up in a wonderful family. I had a wonderful mom and dad. I grew up in a Christian home. I had a dad and a mom that honored God. They loved me and provided for me so that I could grow up and marry somebody, and that we could honor God, and we could have children, and we could raise them to honor God, and to marry, and to have children. And that's the way God intended our culture to go forward. But as we see more and more and more and more births out of wedlock, more and more children with only one parent, more and more children with no basis of why they even exist, because they haven't even been taught the basics in life. And I'll tell you, I get it on the phone all the time. Thursday before I was heading out on this latest campaign swing, I had a young man call me on the phone. He was trying to get into public housing, and he was telling me some of the difficulties he was having because he had some bad references and different things like this. And I asked him, I said, what is it you do, and why don't you have good work? And he had the ability to lay carpeting and put down hardwood floors and do ceramic. And I said, why don't you go buy yourself some tools, put an ad in the paper, and start laying floors? I says, many great companies were started this way. Many people started with very little and built it into something. You know, all he kept going back, well, it's the government's responsibility to give me a house. And then he said something even more shocking. He says, I don't understand these landlords that are in the business making money renting apartments. He says, aren't they in the business of housing people? No. I said, no. They're in the business of owning a property, renting it out for a profit. As a result of that, you have a place you can rent, but the purpose of that investment is to get a return on their investment. He thought that was just terrible. Can you imagine? He said, people making money off apartments. He said, we should pass a law to make sure that they can only make so much money.
Yeah, President said that.
That's right. That's right. So this is the mentality of the culture that we're engaged in, and this is what's happening in our culture. Now, all of us have different ways to be a part of the solution. My way of being part of the solution was to get involved in government and run for mayor. Part of my solution is to run for lieutenant governor. This is a crowded race. There's 5 people in this race. We're the hardest working candidate in this race. Your answer may be to be involved in something else that can change people's lives. And be on a mission, be focused, and be dedicated, and be unwavering, like that guy, Glenn Grothman there. No matter what they say to you, stay on task and change the surroundings around us. And I honestly believe that we can turn it around. I really do. I honestly believe we can. But I also believe something, that if we don't do it soon, there is no hope. And yes, yes, absolutely. I did see where the federal government now is going to start buying treasuries. That's a fancy way for monetizing the debt. It's a fancy way for saying we're going to print dollars, buy back our own debt, and then the debt evaporates. Well, you know what happened this week? The dollar is falling now. And And the dollar will continue to fall as long as it has no value to back it up. And monetizing the debt is just another step towards destruction. I was listening to somebody explain to me about Wisconsin's troubles, and I'm very familiar with that. And he explained how we are rapidly moving towards a place where we're unsustainable. But he said there is a way to fix Wisconsin's problem, and he proceeded to do that. Somebody asked him, what about the federal government? And he said this, I do not believe the federal government's problems can be fixed any longer. I believe we're at the point of no return. And obviously that has to be the case because we have a president now that every week is spending billions and hundreds of billions of dollars to solve a brand new problem, not only knowing he's creating a bigger problem by this massive load of debt.
True.
And doesn't care. But anyways, that's my little speech. So I'd love to take questions, and you seem to be a very patient group. You know, pastors need more parishioners like you that aren't going, well, it's 8:05 and we've been here an hour. We better get out to the parking lot. After all, we got to get to Grandma's Cafe before the beef stew's all sold out. So.
Actually, that was a better speech on life than we hear from many pulpits.
Well, I wish you could get our latest email on life. It was, somebody wrote it for me, and it's a superb piece. And it reflects absolutely every single one of my views. And it was just excellent. So, but questions, please.
Dave, I'm going to start with a few of our standard ones. But first question, I think a lot of people have a misunderstanding of what actually the lieutenant governor even does. So can you give us your impression of what the lieutenant governor's job is in the state?
Absolutely, and I can do it by first of all, let me start out with how I've worked with the Lieutenant Governor of Wisconsin here, the one we have now. And as mayor, I can't pick which party I have to work. I got to work with whoever's work. But we worked very carefully with the Lieutenant Governor's office on the Great Lakes Water Compact. And that was protecting Great Lakes water from being shipped to New Mexico and Arizona and all over the country through a pipeline. We needed to find a compact that would preserve that body of water for the best interest of the 8 states that border it. Canada has similar treaties and recognition that this is a resource that should be transported out of the basin as well. I worked with the Lieutenant Governor on that. I worked with the Lieutenant Governor on some small business SBA issues and helping our local small business understand there were programs available to them to help them during this recession. And I can go on and on. So, but just as mayor of the city of Superior, I have certain executive responsibilities that I have to fulfill. But the rest of the time, I take on projects and I'm motivated to change things and fix things. And that's exactly what I'll do as your next Lieutenant Governor. I am going to first of all, I need to drive the agenda of the governor. He's going to have a big sell on this next budget. I believe the next governor is going to be a conservative Republican, and it's going to be a tough sell to take $3 billion out of this next budget and sell it to the citizens of Wisconsin and convince the legislature to pass this. Glenn is exactly right. They get weak in the knees when they start thinking about, will I get elected again if I vote for this? And I'm telling you, even good people talk this way and think this way in the legislature. And so I believe that will be the primary role. Let me also say this, and I've said this to Tea Party groups and groups all over. Your job, your job is not done after this election, November 2nd. You're not done. No, your job has just started. This is where your job begins. This is the most important part of the job as far as I'm concerned. Is you need to show up in Madison and Washington, and all those politicians that came and stood in front of you and pandered and said whatever you wanted them to say, you hold their feet to the fire. And you become an organization that's an accountable organization on the behavior of electeds. That's where your real power is going to be. That is going to be where your real power is. And so you educate yourself on every issue coming before the legislature. Stay close to guys like Senator Glenn Grothman. He'll let you know what's happening, where it's happening, and what you need to do. But if you don't stay engaged after the election, I will tell you this. Len, my wife, we know a politician that's been in government for a long time. And you know what he told me? He says, don't worry about them people, you know, they all, during the election and all this, they're all wired and geared up and they're all concerned. He says, don't worry, they have a 5-minute memory and they forget it and they just go away. I'm telling you folks, don't go away. Don't go away. If you do, you'll do exactly what they want you to do. My campaign manager when I ran for mayor the first time said to me, he says, Dave, if you don't do what you said you're going to do if you get elected, I'm going to be your own worst enemy. Exactly what Bill Anderson told me. So I was just as much scared of him as I was worried about keeping my word.
We'll get into a couple things. First of all, your opponents. Now, Brett Davis, Lieutenant Governor, I know you might not want to talk bad about him, but I've got a couple things that I want to point out about him. First of all, he voted for Doyle's budget, and he also supports ethanol mandates. Tell me your stance on those two particular issues.
Well, first of all of Doyle's budgets have been horrible. I can't think of one of them because I'm one of these guys that read a lot. And on every 2-year budget, there comes out a 100-page summary. Now, there's a summary that's a little larger, that's 1,200 pages on the budget. I would suggest you guys become educated in the 1,200-page version because that's where the garbage is all buried. That's where they're funding a Mung Center in downtown Milwaukee. That's where they just bury this stuff. It's just, and it only took me an hour and a half to find $400 million in waste in Doyle's last budget. It took me 90 minutes to find $400 million in waste. So read that 100-page budget summary at the minimum. It's called the budget brief. And you know what? First of all, ask every politician who's in Madison, ask them if they've even read the brief, because they're going to be asked to vote on this. Shame on them if they can't wade through 100 pages. But I think if you're a legislature, you should at least be familiar with the 1,200-page version because that's what you're voting on.
How do we get our hands, or get hands on these?
Those are available on all the websites. The government, state of Wisconsin website. Bang! Make sure your printer's got plenty of paper in it. Hit print and go for it. Yes,
That's right.
It's there and available. So all those are. As far as mandates, I'm a free market person. Here's the other problem with mandates. Business is becoming dependent on mandates. Business now is becoming dependent on the handouts and the special favors. I will tell you this, there is a significant business in the state of Wisconsin that is not supporting me. You know why? Because they've gotten millions of dollars off of the legislators in the so-called free market economy that we work in. And we've got to end the corporate welfare as well as we need to end the private welfare, and we need to end the mandates and let the free market take care of itself.
So I just want, on the budget, you wouldn't have voted for Doyle's budget.
I wouldn't have voted for any of the budgets. The only time I stood with Governor Doyle, and this is one time on part of his budget, was there was a move to take Racine, Milwaukee, the city of Superior, Beloit, and punish us by taking us out of the budget and removing a bunch of dollars, but not in relation to any of the other cities that were receiving funds. We cried foul and had that reversed. We want a level playing field.